890.
Confirm.
Long-range cartridge selection. There are many different cartridges available that are well suited for long-range shooting. The question is, which one is right for you? Well, that depends on exactly what you will be doing with your rifle. One can easily spend countless hours wandering through the thousands of cartridge load combinations looking for that perfect choice. This video series will help you streamline your cartridge load combination selection procedure so that you don't get lost in the endless circle of debate, spending hundreds of hours fretting over other shooters' opinions on what cartridge you should be using. Believe it or not, there is actually a logical way to narrow down your choices by prioritizing the cartridge characteristics that will best suit your specific needs. This video will enable you to make your own choice based not on opinion, but rather on a systematic breakdown of the options and a streamlined elimination process that points you straight to the choice that will best cover your mission parameters. A word before we begin here. Far too much emphasis has been placed on long-range cartridge selection, in my opinion. And many shooters have failed to embrace the full potential that lies dormant in their own rifle cabinets. There's no doubt that more velocity and flatter trajectories can give you an edge at extreme range. But an experienced long-range shooter with an old 30-06 deer rifle, equipped with the proper optics, can easily outdistance a greenhorn with a brand new 30-378 Weatherby Magnum who doesn't know how to properly calculate a firing solution for a shot. It's true that fast, streamlined bullets with flat trajectories can be particularly advantageous to the average hunter who is not equipped to precisely correct for his bullet drop or wind drift. But to the experienced long-range marksman, the playing field is leveled significantly due to his ability to dial in his weapon precisely for an exact range, compensating for all the various factors that the normal rifleman may be largely unaware of. In short, if you already possess your favorite old 257 Roberts or your old trusty 35 Whalen, and you are worried that they're not going to be up to the task, well, consider the fact that the mild, meek 308 Winchester, with its mediocre at best long-range ballistic performance, has long been the world standard in a long-distance sniper cartridge. Your ability to accurately engage targets at long range does not hinge solely upon your cartridge selection, as you will be dialing in your weapon system precisely for each shot. Most of the popular sporting cartridges that the average deer hunter relies on have superior long-range ballistic performance when compared to the military and police standard 308 loadings. So you can relax. Most likely, what you already have sitting in your gun cabinet will get you beyond 1,000 meters without a problem once you get everything properly situated. So if you already possess a good center fire rifle, this series will show you how to determine what your cartridge is capable of and will assist you in choosing the perfect long-range loading. If you plan to build a brand new weapon system from the ground up and you want a custom tailored load to your specific needs, we're going to also show you how to select the right cartridge and loading for that as well. So let's get to it here. Okay. In order to determine which cartridge will best suit your needs, we will first have to know exactly what your needs are. Here are the main questions that you're going to need to ask yourself that are going to really determine your choice. Number one, how far is your target going to be? And number two, how tough is your target going to be to put down? After you have narrowed down your cartridge options to those that can effectively reach your target and put it down, then You can continue to narrow down your options based on your own ammo resupply capabilities and component availability. You want to be able to ensure that you will always be able to keep your rifle fed. After you got that squared away, you can then do your final elimination by considering other factors like weapon mobility. If you plan to carry that weapon around while you're chasing elk up and down the mountainsides, you can pretty much rule out a 29-pound 50 caliber BMG. You know what I'm saying? You will then also consider your environmental conditions and look at the differences in wind deflection between the different cartridge choices. After that, you can look at your remaining cartridges that are still on your list and keep crossing them off by, look at your trajectories. Which one has the flattest trajectory? Which one has the lowest recoil? Or whatever is going to be the most important to you. You simply need to list your priorities in order of importance to your particular mission, and then begin crossing off the options that don't measure up until you have narrowed it down to your final choice. That's the systematic way of doing this. And then it also eliminates a lot of debating as well. Okay, so let's break it down in greater detail here. In order to make a good logical choice, you will need to list the different potential long-range cartridges that are available to you in your area. Just list them out. You will simply write them down in a notebook or type them up, make a table on Microsoft Excel or whatever you want to do. And then you'll have to look up the most suitable long-range loadings in each of those cartridges and write down the key information on each of them. Typically, the most suitable long-range loading will be the bullet with the highest ballistic coefficient, and also with the sufficient design to adequately penetrate the vitals of your target. Now, here's a big one. The lighter bullet with the highest muzzle velocity is not your criteria for a long-range load selection. That is a bad deal. That is not correct. You want to look for the bullet with the highest ballistic coefficient so that you can reach your target. And you want the proper bullet construction so that you can put your target down when it gets there. If you're shooting at like steel targets or small game, you can use target bullets that are built primarily for accuracy and external ballistic performance. Now, if you're going to be using your rifle for hunting or military applications where it's going to require adequate penetration, you're going to want to choose a bullet with the highest ballistic coefficient that is still going to hold together and penetrate when it strikes your target. So you're going to have to weigh those two things out. We're going to go into that in a lot greater detail on this topic in our next video covering long-range bullet selection, specifically about the projectile itself. We're going to get more detail there. For now, let's just try to pick a cartridge to go with. So when you're making your list of potential long-range cartridges, be sure to get the load data for the bullet with the highest ballistic coefficient. And you can usually look up ballistic coefficients like in a reloading manual, or the people who sell their bullets like Sierra, Hornady, or Spear, or whoever you're going to go with, they're going to pretty much advertise the ballistic coefficient is going to be listed, usually along with the manufacturer's literature. So some of you might be asking, what is ballistic coefficient? The quick definition here, it's basically an index of the manner in which a particular projectile decelerates in free flight, expressed mathematically. Here's the formula. And we'll get into that, the details of ballistic coefficient. We'll get more detailed as we do our Long Range 101 external ballistics video. But for right now, all you basically need to know is that the higher the ballistic coefficient of the projectile, the better it will maintain its velocity and energy over long distances, and the better it'll be able to cut through wind and have less wind deflection. Generally speaking, heavier bullets that are long and sleek with like a pointy nose and a tapered heel, they call that a boat tail, if you're not familiar with that, will have better ballistic coefficients than those which are lighter, shorter, less sleek, with dull noses and squared off rear heels. The ballistic coefficient is basically a mathematical expression of how aerodynamic the projectile is. For long-range applications, here's my experience. You're going to want ballistic coefficients at least in the mid-400s, or 0.4s is actually how it is. It's a coefficient number, but I'll just refer to it as the 400s, 500s. But you'll note the decimal point in there. So like a typical long-range 30 caliber rifle bullet is going to usually be in the mid-400s to the lower 500s. A bullet with a ballistic coefficient of more like 500 is pretty desirable for long range, and it should maintain its velocity and cut through wind pretty well. Once you get up into the 600s, that's outstanding. That's really good, and that's going to be an excellent performer for our purposes. If you get into the serious anti-material cartridges like the 408 Shitac or the 50 cals, you're going to see phenomenal ballistic coefficients in the 0.9s and even 1.0s. I mean, really, really good. So the higher, the better. But you want at least I would say in the upper 400s. You can get away with some of the lower 400s, but that's not the best. So when you list your cartridge choices, pick the loadings with projectiles yielding the highest ballistic coefficients you can get without sacrificing the penetration you're going to need. So pay attention to both of those things. It's not going to matter if your bullet is, right on target if it can't penetrate the target, if you need penetration. So keep that in mind. For each cartridge option, you're going to also need to obtain the bullet weight. When you're listing these out, you're going to want to get the bullet weight, the type of bullet, the ballistic coefficient, we just talked about that, and its typical muzzle velocity for that particular loading. Once you have this information for all your different potential cartridges, you can plug that data into an online ballistic calculator or try to find ballistic data published by the manufacturers. So we're going to be comparing these different cartridges here. In order to find a cartridge's maximum effective range, you're going to need to get a readout of the remaining velocities of each of your choices at extended ranges. I would try to get data out to like at least 1,500 meters to get a good sampling of your options. The max supersonic range of the bullet will be the last distance at which your bullet was above the transonic range, which is going to be, right above Mach 1, somewhere in the ballpark of 1,200 feet a second. That varies with atmospheric density. But that'll be your maximum effective range of the cartridge you're going to pick, is your max supersonic range. Once it goes subsonic, and we'll explain this in greater detail later on, that's you're not going to have your accuracy anymore. So your max effective range will be your max supersonic range, and you'll have to know your velocities at various ranges to get that. Another thing you're going to want to compare in the different cartridge loadings is remaining energy at various intervals all the way out to their max supersonic ranges. This will help you narrow down those cartridge loadings that still have enough oomph to get the job done once it gets there. Also, make sure to get the wind deflection data when you're picking up your ballistic data here for each of your cartridge options, and get those out to the maximum effective ranges as well. Even though we will be precisely correcting for bullet drop, I still like to compare the bullet drop data to see which cartridge will be the most forgiving if I were to make a slight ranging error. So even though we're going to be dialing it in exactly, and you don't have to pay so much attention to your flatness of your trajectories, a more flat trajectory will be a little more forgiving for range errors. So you'll want to get that data as well. Once you have gathered all of this data for your various cartridge options, you will make a simple chart or a table and compare the different choices. Start with your mission priorities and appropriately eliminate the options that don't meet your requirements. You will eventually narrow down your choices until you have got 1 or 2 cartridges remaining on your list. So first we're going to have to list all of our mission parameters. One of those parameters is going to have to be our maximum range that you're going to be wanting to shoot. So how far is your target going to be? You're going to need to determine your maximum potential range and write it down. What's the maximum range capability that your particular mission will demand? You're going to need to look at your area of operations. Will your area of operations limit you to 600 meters because of foliage and brush and stuff? Or are you going to be operating in wide open terrain and you want that ability to shoot like 1,200 meters? Will the details of your mission parameters push you beyond 1,400 meters? I mean, you got to determine how far you're going to have to go. You're going to need to consider your area of operations and determine what your maximum range will be. Scout out your potential firing positions in your area and determine how far that you can see. You know, ranges can be deceiving, so check your ranges with like a GPS or a rangefinder to get a good assessment. Now, how are we going to know if a particular cartridge choice is going to measure up to our range that we're going to need to shoot? Well, a typical rifle bullet exits the muzzle at about 2.5 times the speed of sound. As it encounters air resistance, its velocity begins to decay and the bullet slows down. As I mentioned before, the maximum range of your potential cartridge and loading can be determined by examining its maximum supersonic range. As we'll explain later in greater detail in our external ballistics video, the bullet remains relatively stable in its flight path until it encounters what's called the transonic zone, usually around 1,200 feet a second. So consult the data you obtained from your online ballistics program of choice to find out when the bullet approaches Mach 1 in its deceleration. After the bullet drops below the speed of sound, it will have encountered the transonic barrier and its accuracy potential is severely diminished. So as long as your bullet is still above the speed of sound, it is still within its effective range. Okay, go to your list and cross off all the cartridges that don't reach far enough for your needs. That's one of the first eliminations you can do on your list. The next question you're going to ask in your cartridge selection is, what exactly is this target you're going to be shooting at? How much remaining energy are you going to need at your maximum effective range? Well, are you shooting at prairie dogs, coffee cans, steel targets, tomatoes? What are you shooting at? If you're simply shooting at steel targets, then remaining energy is not an issue. Do you plan to use a rifle for hunting medium-sized game? Do you want to put down a bull elk at 1,000 meters? Are you an operator on a hard target interdiction team that you have to penetrate and crack the solid fuel rings of an SS-1 Scud missile that's about to launch? I mean, what are you doing? You already determined that your projectile has the ability to reach its target at your specified range. Now you have to ensure that it will do its job when it gets there. For this, you're going to be examining the remaining energy at your maximum effective range that you have determined earlier. For varmint hunting or target shooting, energy is not an issue. For medium game like a deer, I would want at least like a 357 Magnum or a 45 ACP equivalent in energy to ensure at least a minimum of lethality. So like 500 foot-pounds of remaining energy might be enough. For larger game, or for hardened targets in a military setting, remaining energy of at least 1,000 foot-pounds at your max range would probably be wise. Of course, sectional density and bullet design are crucially important here as well, but we'll cover that more when we talk about our bullet selection. Okay, now you need to make sure that you'll always be able to keep your rifle fed. Ammunition and reloading component availability. This is one thing that many folks completely ignore, but it may be crucially important. If you are strictly target shooting for recreation or sports purposes, this is not so much of an issue. However, if you plan to use this weapon in a real-world deployment or an emergency situation, ammunition availability may be your most crucial factor in choosing a cartridge. if you're attached to a military fighting unit and resupply is not an issue, you may be able to get away with some of the more exotic loadings. But if you're going to be holding down the fort for long periods of time and resupply in your area has been disrupted, you're going to wish that you would have had a more readily available loading that you could tap into much more easily on whatever battlefield you're going to be on. So this is where the current military cartridge loadings are highly beneficial. I'm thinking like 308 Winchester. Now, if you are defending the homeland from foreign invaders and you are not attached to a military unit, resupply may be easiest for the super popular classic hunting cartridges, where loaded ammo and its components are available at pretty much every small town hardware store, or you can go down to your Uncle Pete's farm and get some ammo or something. I mean, a world-class sniper rifle is no good if you run out of ammo and have to rely on someone else's inferior loads that your charge ain't tailored to. I suppose if you can stockpile enough components and don't plan on moving around, then a less available cartridge of your choice may be fine. But if you have to bug out of your location, you may have to have a backup rifle set aside that is geared for a more available cartridge. One way to kind of categorize this is to assign a letter code to your different cartridge options that represent their potential availability, and add this into your comparison chart that you're building there. So you already got all your ballistics data on your cartridge comparisons that you're considering for your weapon here. You can add a new column in there called cartridge availability. I set up my letter code kind of like this, with A being the most available cartridges and D being like the least available cartridges. Now, if we do this, we will be able to quickly index through our choices and limit those cartridges that will not meet our resupply minimums. So here's how I got mine set up, just so you can get an idea of how to kind of set up this table here. This is ammunition component availability, and this is going to vary for your particular area wherever you're at. Mine will be different than yours because what's available in my particular area will not probably match yours. So like your A cartridges are going to be cartridges that are currently being issued to military or security forces and are widely available for resupply across the area in which you'll be operating. We'll assign letter B to cover the cartridges that may not be of current military issue, but in which loaded ammunition and or its components are still readily available for resupply or purchase in your area. These would include formally issued military cartridges that are in abundant supply in your area, or widely popular hunting cartridges. We'll assign letter C for cartridges that may not be readily available in all areas of operations, but are still reasonably obtainable from multiple sources for resupply. These would include all cartridges in which factory-loaded ammunition, cases, bullets, and other reloading components are currently available by several different sources, but may require special order to purchase or obtain. Like if you maybe order it online or in a catalog or something like that, where you can get ammo, it's just you can't go down to the local store and buy it. And then letter D will put for cartridges that are difficult to obtain, where loaded ammunition and or its reloading components are only available from one or two sources. These would include any proprietary or wildcat cartridges, such as like your Akeley Improves, a lot of your Weatherby type cartridges, Lazzaronis, along with obsolete or antique military cartridges, in which components and loaded ammunition are not readily available for resupply from at least more than two sources. So that's kind of your ammunition component availability. Go ahead and assign some kind of system like that on your charts so that you can quickly index through that when we're starting our elimination procedure. So once you've narrowed your cartridge choices to only those that attain your range requirements and have enough remaining energy to do the job you outlined, and once you've ensured that you will be able to maintain your ammo supply, now you need to consider factors like wind deflection, recoil, and weapon system cartridge compatibility, things like that. So what we're doing is just prioritization here. Okay, so let me show you how this streamlined cartridge elimination process works. This is actually kind of fun once we get going with our chart here. So let's try it. Eight 890, confirm.
Green light.
Okay.
Oh, you got it! Holy cow, you got it!
Oh, yeah. Good call.